England, 1815. If you wanted to travel, a stagecoach sold you one of two tickets. The expensive one put you inside the coach, the cheap one put you up on the roof, out in the open, where you took whatever the sky threw at you. The ticket even had a name for what you were, an outside passenger. So picture this journey. The inside of the coach is empty, rain starts falling, and the coachman looks up at a boy getting soaked on the roof and takes pity on him. "Come inside, kid." But the boy refuses, unless the poorly dressed old woman riding up there with him gets to come in too. So the coachman lets them both in. Then the lady needs the coach, and someone demands the old woman, and the boy get thrown back out into the rain. It was not the lady, it was her maid. Here is how it happened. The lady was a Mrs. Barnett, married to a gentleman near London. Her own carriage had broken down in the middle of the road, and this coachman happened to know her. His route ran right past her husband's house, so he offered to drop her at her own door. Then he explained the two passengers inside, just outside passengers sheltering from the rain, and if her ladyship insisted, they would go back up on the roof, since the weather was clearing anyway. Her ladyship never even got the chance to say whether she wanted the two of them put out, because the maid took over. She called the old woman frightful. She called the boy beggarly looking. She said her mistress could not possibly sit with such creatures, and certainly not in such a dirty machine. And then the maid said the line that settled it. Fair or foul, they must get out directly. The coachman pushed back and told her not to smear the character of people who were saying nothing against hers. But it made no difference, and he took the boy by the arm to put him out anyway. That is when the lady herself finally spoke. "Let the child remain and the woman also. There is room for us all." Then she stepped into the coach and sat down, which meant the maid had to climb in after her. So now watch these four people ride together. The old woman keeps trying to chat with Mrs. Barnett, who answers kindly every time and then goes quiet. She has just dropped her daughter at boarding school, the first time they have ever been apart. Then the old woman turns to the maid and says something about the weather. The maid says nothing. She looks the old woman's cheap gown up and down, brushes the dust off her own silk sleeves, lifts her nose and turns her eyes away. A servant in silk, too grand to speak to a poor woman in a rough brown dress. Now here is the twist. That scene is not a news report. It comes from a book printed in 1815 called The Young Woman's Companion, an instruction manual teaching girls how to behave, and it was already in its third edition. The maid is the warning. Mrs. Barnett is the model. That entire coach ride was a lesson. And the same training was being drilled into children across the ocean in America, except there it was written out as actual rules. In 1843, Catherine Beecher published a schoolbook for young ladies, and the rules inside are wild. Children must give anyone older, or anyone above them in rank, first claim on every comfort. Every yes and every no to a superior must come with a sir or a ma'am, so that every single answer a child gives admits who stands above them. And in a large family, the younger kids must be required to treat their own grown brothers and sisters as superiors. Beecher even explains the logic. Let a child treat just one superior as an equal, and soon it will claim equality with everyone. And that, she says, is exactly why the youngest child in a family always turns out the rudest. The baby of the family grows up treating its big brothers and sisters as equals, so it ends up respecting nobody. But then Beecher admits something. The sir and mom custom is already dying out, even among the most polite and respectable families. Her advice is to cherish every remnant of it. So in 1843, the rule book itself was telling readers to hold on to what was left. In 1855, a famous American statesman named Edward Everett looked back on his own childhood. Back then, children walking to school would line up by the roadside whenever a traveler or an older person passed. The girls curtsied. The boys bowed. They even had a name for it. They called it making our manners, and Everett said that world was gone, never coming back. He called it a forgotten order of things. Then he described what replaced it. One winter he rode into town in a carriage that was open at the front, and riding with him was a college president, the head of Bowdoin College in Maine. They passed a schoolhouse at the exact moment the boys came pouring out, and the boys started throwing snowballs at the carriage. Everett jokes that they must have learned about the laws of motion in class because they were now demonstrating them on his head. A college president hit with snowballs by schoolchildren in the country where children once bowed at the roadside. Now for the strangest part of this whole story. 33 years later, an American went to Europe, found the old systems still alive and running, and loved it. In 1888, an American writer named Mrs. Sherwood, who wrote books on good manners, described the countryside around Aix in France. There was an old peasant woman there who had carried cheese and milk into town for 40 years, and in her 60s she was still walking 8 miles a day to do it. She had a daughter, and in France the rank you were born into was the rank you kept for life. So the daughter would never be allowed to join the parties and dances in town, where the better classes gathered. In America, Sherwood admitted, a girl like her might dream of climbing that high. Not in France. There, the daughter would spend her whole life as a peasant, exactly like her mother. And Sherwood approved. This is a writer from the country of the snowballs, the country whose own rule books had watched Sir and Ma'am die out, and her verdict on a girl locked out of society for life. She will be far happier this way, more respectable, and, in Sherwood's exact word, more picturesque, prettier to look at. But one thing from that peasant's life did climb the ladder. The clothes, peasant dress, Sherwood wrote, had given the fashion designers plenty of ideas. The tall pointed hat the peasant women wore in the fields had become fashionable, and the flat straw hat trimmed with corn and a red poppy went even further. It was seen first in the fields and then everywhere above them, rising from the peasant girl all the way up to the duchess. The hat rose through every rank in society. The daughter could not rise one.